Tune into this week's On.net, where I have my good friend Angelo's on talking about how we can leverage Visual Studio's connected services to help manage our dependencies. So tune in. Welcome back, everyone, to another On.net. I am your host, James Montemagno, Program Manager on the .net community team. I'm real excited because if you're like me and you're building applications, you often have a lot of dependencies in your applications as they continue to grow, specifically some cloud dependencies, because you're adding more and more awesome features to your applications and you need help managing them. And Visual Studio is here to help. And so is one of my best friends in the entire world, Angelo's. How's it going, buddy?
Hi, James. Good to be here.
It's awesome to have you. In fact, Angelo's and I have been working super close in the last few weeks. I'm not going to lie about it, not just for On.net, but just on some really cool things that are coming to Visual Studio. Yeah. Independent of this, we're going to have you come back on and talk about a whole bunch of craziness that's happening that's super rad. But Angelo's, I know that you've done some VS Toolbox episodes, some other videos in the past, but might be brand new. Maybe tell everyone a little bit about what you do here at Microsoft.
Yeah, so I'm a product manager for .NET, but I generally work on tooling inside of VS, and especially integration with Azure services. But it's not just about connecting to Azure, it's also about your local development and having an awesome inner loop with emulators and alternatives, and just also helping you with the end-to-end when you're building apps in Azure. And we're going to show you some of this stuff, just scratching the surface today.
I love that because you said end-to-end, right? And I think as developers, we're not just deploying apps all the time, right? We need to actually create the projects. We need to add our dependencies. We need to debug. We need to figure out what's going wrong. We need to analyze those things. And that's why I love doing this show, because I get to learn about so many amazing tools and libraries and integrations that developers can use to help them be more successful every day. And that's why I love .NET and I love Visual Studio. I mean, I've been using it for, well, not 25 years, almost 25 years. I guess I would have been 10. So I wasn't quite there, but I think my first VS interaction was like 16 or 17, so not too far off.
Yeah, I mean, I remember .NET Beta coming out, and the only way to try it out was with VS back then. So I remember, really early on.
So what are we going to talk about today specifically when it comes to managing Azure dependencies?
Okay, so I mean, for it to make sense, I want to show you a cool thing running in Azure. So we're going to look at some cool things we can do with .NET in Azure. But as we do that, we're also going to be looking at the tooling in Visual Studio and how it's helping us along the way. So some of the interesting patterns we're going to see is, serving static content through Azure Functions. And yet, even though it's statically served, how can we update it live using Azure SignalR?
Okay.
And then the whole architecture is going to be very asynchronous. But how do we get to build all of that easily? And we're going to highlight the Azure Function integration with VS and its very powerful triggers, and how basically just through interacting with connected services, you get to build all of that with very little cognitive overload, I would say.
Awesome. These are all of some of my favorite services that you're talking about. I use like functions like every day, nonstop. So I'm excited. You just want to get into it? I just love going straight into demos if you're ready.
Yeah, I think the best way is to just show you the demo. It's going to be running. You may not exactly know what's happening, but I'll talk you through it, and then we'll dive into the code in VS and see how it's all working.
All right, let's do it. I see it. I have no idea what I'm looking at. What am I looking at here?
Right. So I have two windows open. On the left-hand side, I have a dashboard. I have built that. This is part of the demo.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
I know. I was supposed to add some more CSS, but I just did not have the time. I'm sorry. But that's not the point, right? It's not the point for it to look pretty. This is supposed to inspire you to go and figure things out for your own use cases, right? So this beautiful dashboard on the left is showing me some stuff. And on the right-hand side, I have a RabbitMQ. This is an admin portal that I get for free. I didn't build this. Just because my application connects to RabbitMQ, I get this admin portal. And you may be wondering, sorry.
For anyone brand new, what is RabbitMQ?
Right. So RabbitMQ is a messaging system. So the idea that I have a message and I want to make sure it doesn't get lost, but I don't care if it's processed immediately or maybe later. I want to put it in MQ, in the RabbitQ, and then it's going to persist. And then whenever I'm ready, I'm going to pull it out of the queue and work on it. That's the general gist of this.
Perfect.
And you may be wondering, okay, the left-hand side, you've built it. The right-hand side is an admin portal. Like, how do I get there? Don't worry about any of that. This is where connected services and VS comes in. We'll talk about that later.
Cool.
All right. So let me just show you things running. I'm going to come in here into my admin portal for RabbitMQ, and this is just a very easy way for me to do my inner loop. I'm going to put a message in here as a test. I'm going to say, hello there, James.
Hello.
I'm going to send this message. All right. So I'm going to click publish. The message is gone. And we just have things happening in the background. Things are moving. And my message bar on the left updated. I have all of my messages, and the most recent message says there's a tracking ID. It was received just now. It was assigned to Tony, and the details of the message is hello there, James.
Nice. That's cool.
So, I mean, you don't know if it's cool yet, but I'll show you why it's cool.
I mean, you pressed a button on one side of the screen, and then things showed up on the other side of the screen. I'm impressed already. Ship it. I mean,
right?
It's amazing.
Right. So now keep in mind, this is not a demo about scaling in Azure and that type of thing. This is meant to inspire you, do cool things and see how the VS tooling can help you along the way, right? So cool. Let's zoom out for a minute. Let me show you the general overall architecture of what is happening behind the scenes. How do we get a tracking ID? How do we get the timestamp? What does it mean to be assigned to somebody? How did all of that work? All I did was type the message, hello there, James, right? And somehow all that happened. So let's jump into I'm not going to spend too much time on this diagram. I'm just going to give you a general idea of what just happened, right? So step one, I had an incoming order. You saw me type something into the RabbitMQ, and that message went into the queue. And then I had a processor. I had somebody be notified of that. And as soon as that happened, well, when you have an incoming order, whether it's like a kitchen that you have an order, or whether it's a fulfillment center, you want to have a timestamp of when you receive the order, so you know how long it takes you to fulfill it. And you also want to have a tracking ID, so as the order goes through stages, you can follow it. So that's what step two is. We have a processor in Azure Functions, timestamps it, and adds a tracking ID. Now, we want to now put it back into the queue so that it can be assigned to somebody to work on it. Just to spice things up here, we didn't want to use another RabbitMQ, so I just used CosmosDB as the store for the second queue. It's just to keep things exciting. Once that happens, I want to know that my stuff in CosmosDB was changed so that I can say, well, what employee can work on this order? Then I want to have some logic to assign it. And once that happens, I want that to go into my operational database. My order fulfillment web API is going to take care of that for me. And at the same time, I want to show my live dashboard that the order came in, just like you saw, it has been tracked and it has been assigned. So this is overall what we're trying to do here. And unless you have any questions for me, I want to jump into the code and show you how this works.
Well, I think this is really neat because as you're walking through this scenario, it's like every single time I order anything on the internet or do anything, right? Like I was just thinking, I was ordering, some things online the other day, and I was like, well, a ticket came in, and then it got assigned somewhere, and then it maybe sat in processing for a while before they shipped it, and then it was fulfilled, and then it sent, and then probably what happened is like another thing got kicked off for like a tracking ID, which then like restarted the process. Like when you think about ordering something online, because you're talking about like, electronics or like a refrigerator or something, like you're ordering these things and multiple of these workflows are being kicked off and repeated over and over again. I like this architecture. It's really cool. Yeah, I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to see the code.
Right. And it sounds so complex. Everything is triggered and everything is asynchronous. Yeah. You may be thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Well, let me show you how easy it is.
Cool.
Let's jump into VS. All right. I'm going to jump into my solution here. I'm going to stop running it because, you've seen the cool demo. And I'm going to jump into my first project, which is an Azure Functions project here. And I'm going to click on Message Processor because, we said step one is the processing, right?
Yep.
So what I have here is an Azure Function project, and I have a Azure function that I've called the Message Processor. You can see here through the attribute, I can actually name this regardless of what I name my classes. It's just that it's nice to keep them in sync to find your way around. But you will see the code is tiny, right? So it just says, okay, publish static run, great. So it's an Azure function, and you kind of have to tell it, well, when does it run? Is it like, does it get triggered by somebody calling it, something going into a queue? Well, the very first line explains that. It's triggered by RabbitMQ. So as you're just reading the code, you're thinking, okay, so this function is going to run with my RabbitMQ changes, okay. And well, what queue are we talking about? Well, I chose the name unprocessed message. And it's like, okay, there's a RabbitMQ called unprocessed message. And how do I connect to it? Well, don't worry about it. Use the connection string, RabbitMQ connection string. And whatever that message is, you're just going to get it as a parameter. Now, you're probably wondering, how do I get this configured? I'll show you in just a second.
Okay.
All right. So this is very simple. Every time I put something in the RabbitMQ, I'm going to get a parameter with the message, and my method is going to be called. Cool.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Easy. That's like one line of code.
Right. And I'm going to show you how you don't even have to write it.
Nice. Cool.
All right. So the second step is, well, okay, we're going to receive the message. What are we going to do with it? We could just do nothing. But in this architecture, we've decided to do something with it, timestamp it, get the tracking ID, and then go and put it into another queue that is CosmosDB. So here is my output variable. So I'm going to have a CosmosDB output. Okay, what CosmosDB? Here's a database name. Here's a collection name. These are basically how you connect to a server, a CosmosDB server, and you get to your container. And well, where is this CosmosDB running? Don't worry about it. Here's a connection string that tells you how to connect to it. I'll show you how to do that as well. And as long as my content is inside this parameter, this variable, it's going to get saved in CosmosDB.
All you have to do is assign it, and that's it, because it's an out dynamic variable. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's just does it. That's cool.
Yeah, this is the power of .NET and Azure Functions. Like, look how easily you can just declare things and they make sense, right? You just read them and you're like, I can follow this. This is easy. I know what to do.
Yeah, ins and out and things in the middle that are processing that in to put it into an out. Yeah, really cool.
Right. Yeah. And, of course, I probably want to do some type of logging. We're not taking full advantage of it here because it's a demo, but, you want to maybe monitor how things are executing, how fast. Maybe you want to debug something that is extra tough and, maybe it's based on timing. There's a logger here. You can log things, pass strings, business as usual. All right. So what is this thing doing? We said that we want to have a tracking ID and a timestamp. So we create a new GUID. That's going to be our tracking ID. And we said that everything we output to CosmosDB just has to go inside this out variable as a document. So we'll new that, and we'll say, well, it would be nice if we had an ID for just our sake. It's just good practice in the database to just have an ID field. Okay, sure. The message details, we've decided to put the entire message inside the message details. We could have processed it. We could have split things out. Yeah, just keeping it simple. We have a variable called basically a field called message received time. This is our timestamp, and we're saying, well, let's make it UTC and let's take the current time. This is when we process the message, and this is our tracking ID, and that is it.
Easy,
so,
easy peasy. Yep.
Right. So you're thinking, well, okay, well, how did you get here? Like, how did you?
Yeah, do you have to write all that? How do you know that it's a RabbitMQ trigger and CosmosDB and all these magical fields?
Right.
Documentation.
So if you want to, sure, but if you have why do that? Here, let me show you something. Here's a very blank Azure Functions project, right? And I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say right-click, add, new Azure function, right? Okay. And I'm going to say, yes, Azure Function, please, thank you. Okay. So now that I added an Azure Function, let's get a list of all the cool things I can do with Azure Functions, like HTTP trigger, a queue trigger. I just happen to have used a RabbitMQ trigger. Great. Pick that from the list, right? All right. So connection string setting name. All right, let's go back to the previous thing we were building here. We just have a connection string name. Okay, so it's just a way to reference the connection. I can name it whatever I want. Let's keep things simple. Where did my mouse go? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to call this RabbitMQ connection string. Great. The queue name. What did we call the queue in our previous example? I don't remember. Let me see. Unprocessed message. Okay, fine. Well, it's just a name we decide, right? So now Visual Studio is going to generate the Azure function for me, but it has a question. It's saying, have you actually configured this yet? So do you have a RabbitMQ connected and ready? And do you have all these connection strings figured out? Because if so, just click add and things are going to work. But if you need help to configure it, check the box, click add. Fantastic.
Oh, so it's actually going to configure a RabbitMQ for you when you check it.
I don't know how. Yeah, and I don't know how to do this otherwise. Like if I didn't have this, I don't know how to do this manually.
Oh, that's cool.
So all I told VS is I want a RabbitMQ. I want an Azure function with a RabbitMQ. And then it said, do you need help? And I said, yes, please help me set this up. And Visual Studio knows there is a container image out there for RabbitMQ. So it's like, well, you just want RabbitMQ locally. Great. Don't worry about anything. Just click next. And it's like, thank you. And you already told me the connection string name. Great. I'm not going to change that. The connection string value. Well, I guess that's how you connect to RabbitMQ, right? I'm not going to go read docs. I don't have time for that. So all I want to know now is, am I going to go put this in my local user secrets file, the typical thing, or do I want to integrate with Key Vault? So if I want to make sure that everything is always in Key Vault, VS is one click away. But, it's local development. It's F5. Usually I do local user secrets. And when I publish, that's when I configure Key Vault. So for now, I'm just going to do local secrets, right? I'm going to click next. And now VS is going to give me a summary of how it's going to help me. It's basically saying, look, because of your RabbitMQ dependency that you just added, I'm going to help you write the Azure function. I'm going to put the secret into the secret store. And if we need any NuGet packages, we're going to go get those for you. All right. Click finish.
Look at that.
Boom. Look at that. I didn't even have to write this. There's my RabbitMQ. There's my queue. There's my connection string. There's my variable. So I barely have to write any code to get back to our previous example.
That's awesome. It's awesome that it kind of gives you not only like a guided journey of what you need to do, but then summarizes it and then executes upon it, right? So you can kind of see that, do I really, it's like you're putting stuff into the shopping cart and then you're on checkout and you're like, okay, do I really want to do this?
Yeah. And so, I have this RabbitMQ thing. I'm not very familiar with it. VS helped me kind of get it set up. To complete my end-to-end, I kind of also need that management console, right? That RabbitMQ admin thing. And I haven't read any of the docs. I don't know how to do any of that. So I'm just going to go to connected services. And this is the view that tells me of all the things that are connected to my app right now.
Oh,
and
cool.
I haven't shown you everything yet, right? So we haven't talked about everything yet, but here's my RabbitMQ connection. And I'm just going to click the dots and see what can VS help me here. And they're saying, okay, you can edit the dependency and disconnect it, all those kind of management things. But more importantly, it says, well, this is a container. So do you want to manage the container lifecycle? And it also has a management portal. Do you want to just open its admin console? So let me just click that. All right. This is it. This is what I used before to send that test message. This is how I got to it. I don't have to know the URL. I don't have to know how this works. It's just VS is helping me just discover things with very little time. And
that's very cool. Yeah, you're telling Visual Studio, hey, these are the things I want to use, and Visual Studio's like, hey, here are things that you can do with it, right? You don't have to go find some magical command line or some magical URL. It's like, hey, let me help you out a little bit. That's neat. That's neat. And now, how did you get to the connected services thing again?
All right, so a couple of ways. You can double click on connected services in Solution Explorer. That's one way. You can just start searching for things. Connected services. That's also another way.
Cool.
And if you close everything down and you right-click publish, this what we call App Designer comes up. It's also a tab on the left. So navigating between connected services and publish is also very easy. There's a reason for that. It's because your dependencies might change when you publish. So it's nice to have them close by. We'll talk about that another time.
Gotcha. Cool.
All right. So we talked about the message processor, and we saw where the message comes in, it gets timestamped, and then it has a tracking ID, and it goes back to the Cosmos queue. Well, at some point, we saw the message come in and then get assigned to an employee. Well, how does that work? Let's go take a look at the message dashboard class I have here. And I'm going to scroll down to the method here that I have that is called broadcast. Okay, I just chose to name that. It doesn't have to be called that. But let's go through the same exercise as we did before. Let's read how does this work. So it's a CosmosDB function. So it's triggered when the data in my CosmosDB changes. So my previous function is going to basically asynchronously work with this one. I just don't know they're connected because it's all happening through triggers. And it's going to access the same order, database, and container through the same connection string as we had before, which is the CosmosDB connection string. And I told you before that I have a plan for this dashboard to be served statically and to be updated live. And the way I'm going to do that is using SignalR. Now, do you know what SignalR is?
Yeah, SignalR, we haven't done too many videos of, but we do have some great Microsoft Learn modules that I'll link to in the show notes below. But this is real-time communication, right, through ASP.NET Core and also through Azure SignalR as well to broadcast pub sub nonstop, basically real-time for any .NET application, which is beautiful. I've used it. I've done some great demos on it before, especially from iOS and Android apps. It's super fun to use.
It's fantastic. It scales like crazy, and you can do so many cool things like having a broadcast thing. So if everybody subscribes to the same SignalR hub, you can see 3 different browser windows all get the same updates all the time. It's so many cool things you can build with this.
We use it on the .NET Podcast app, which I'll also link below, that we showed at .NET Conf. But you can create these shared rooms where everybody's listening to a podcast at the same time. That's all managed through SignalR, and everyone can send emojis and can pause and play and fast forward and rewind. It's awesome. So love SignalR.
It's awesome. And then you can combine that with static content I'm going to show you here, or you can combine that with, a live web server too. And it's just endless, the possibilities.
Awesome.
All right. So this function, again, has the classic in and out, right? The in is a CosmosDB trigger. The out is going to be, we're going to do something with SignalR to let our dashboard know that an order has been assigned. Mm-hmm. And our typical iLogger to log anything out to our debugging logs. So the first line of code here talks about a web API. What is this? I haven't talked to you about any web APIs yet, right? So over here, what I have is my second project, which is an ASP.NET Core Web API, has a couple of controllers, employees, and orders. So what is this thing? So in our diagram, we have a CosmosDB, which is where the message came in after it was assigned a tracking ID. And we also have our employees database, so the operational data store. So for that one, I have decided to use SQLite, if you like. So our employees are saved in the SQLite database, and our orders are in the CosmosDB database that we saw before. So my web API is providing a facade to both of those. And let me show you the employee context. It's very simple. It just lists employees. And then our order context, it's very simple. Just lists all the orders. And let's check out program.cs where those things are being hooked up. Okay, so here what I have is I'm adding entity framework support for my SQLite. So services.rdb context. This is kind of how ASP.NET Core helps you implement IOC. So the controllers that want to access this DB context are just going to get it. And all I had to do was specify the configuration, the connection string. I will show you how you don't have to write this code either, even though it's pretty simple.
Cool. I like not writing
services. Yeah, right? Because this is just plumbing code. You do it once and then you just forget how it even works. And it's like, fine, it works now, right?
Yeah.
And then below we have the same thing, another DB context. This is the order one. And this one is being configured to use CosmosDB.
Oh, cool.
The rest is kind of similar, right? So what I have here is my employees controller. It has some get methods, some put methods, get by ID, and my orders controller. And you don't have to write this either. So let me show you how I got here. I went to connected services, and I decided I wanted to connect to something. Now here you can see I'm connected to my CosmosDB and my SQLite already. But how did I get there? I just clicked the big plus button. I got a list of all the things that VS will let me connect to. And this list keeps on growing. That's why we had to add such functionality, so you can find things a bit easier now. We may have to do even more than that. But yeah, so here's all the SQL options. I can use SQL Server Local DB. I can use SQL Server on a container. I can connect directly to Azure SQL Server. I can use Postgres, SQLite. I just chose SQLite here just to keep things interesting. I did the same thing with CosmosDB. What did that look like? Basically, I picked Cosmos, I clicked Next. Now, because I'm signed into Azure here, it says, well, do you have an existing instance of Cosmos you want to connect to? And I don't have to do that. If I want to, I can use a container and an emulator,
cool.
Everything. Yeah, but why not? It's integrated, it's VS. I can just click Next. It will connect me to that instance. Then I can just give it the connection string, click Finish, and I'm there.
Oh, wow.
So I'm connected, right? But what about all the code, all that scaffolded code, all that get, put, and all that setup and the DB context? Like, can I get some help with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it is, like you said, it's just like code that you have to write once and then never worry about again, right? And then you have to make sure it's right. And sure, it would be nice if, you didn't have to write it.
Yeah, help me write it. Like Visual Studio knows kind of what the correct way looks like. So just give me some help. So how did I create these controllers and the changes in program.cs? Well, I went right-click, add, new scaffolded item. Now, we do have plans of enabling this straight from this connected services UI. We're just not there just yet.
Yeah.
But, I say I want an API controller with actions, and I want it to use entity framework. Great. Click add. Here it's saying, well, how do you want to do this? Give me a model class. Like, what are you building an API for? Are you building it for employees, for orders? What are we helping you with? So I just came here and I picked my employee model. And then it says, great, how are we going to connect? Entity Framework has the idea of a data context class, which is the way that you get access to the data store. So you know how I said I have my order context and my employee context. So if I have one already, I can pick it. But when I first started out, I didn't have one. So I just clicked plus and I named it. And that was it.
Oh, cool.
And then I gave my controller name. And I clicked add, and I got my employees controller. And I got all of the Entity Framework code generated for me. And I even went to program.cs, and I got all of my services configured for me. So I have never actually done this manually myself.
Yeah, that's spectacular, because it's like, why even bother having to write it, right? It's like, it's not hard to write a line or two of code, but not only did you not write that, but you're saying you also got the entire controller, which means that you're getting a lot of this default boilerplate implementation for free.
Absolutely. And I never had to actually know what any of these connection strings are. If I want to know what they are, I could just right click and go to manage user secrets, which is the secure by default way. But everything has been so integrated for me. I never had to worry about any of these values.
Yeah.
And they're all just safe in their out of source code location. And they can be in Keyboard later.
Yeah, get to them when you need to, but just let everything work out of the box.
Exactly. All right, so now that you know why we have a web API, it's so basically we can look at the employees that we have and assign them orders. Let's go back to our Azure function here. So this is what this API will do. And it's instead of hard coding the URL, it has a little way of getting the base URL out of its configuration. And then it's going to do some, just use Entity Framework to load the orders that we have, because we just got a trigger from the CosmosDB, and we have our updated results enumeration. This is our variable right here. And this is our updated results, and we're just retrieving them. This is just connecting to the CosmosDB through our parameter. So nothing too out of the ordinary here. I have a little bit of logic here that will take an order and assign it. This is super silly. There's nothing smart going on here. I literally, I thought, let's make it fun. Let's randomize it. So I load all the employees from my API. And then I say, well, let's just create a randomizer. And I just get a random index out of the collection of employees I have retrieved from the database. And then I say, great, the order will be assigned to this employee. And that's all this is doing. This is then just updating the JSON for that. And it's calling back the API, because we just received the order, we received the ID. Now we're going to call our API and say, well, this order has been assigned to this employee through the tracking ID.
Nice.
So let me go back. Go back here to my previous code. All right. So now that we've done that and the database has been updated, what we actually want to do is we're going to update our both stores, and then we're going to send the SignalR message saying something changed, and here's the last change. So here I have another method called generate message. It's just, this is where I was supposed to do that CSS work that I didn't do. So I just have a little message here that says, well, here's all the messages, and here's the most recent message. So here I call out that tracking ID and all that stuff. And then all that does is say, okay, my SignalR connection, the one that I just had here as a variable, right? I just want to have a new message. So there's a method called add async. And then I just construct the message I want to send, which is, it has a variable, a field called target. This is in case you want to send multiple messages and you want to know for what area that is. You can figure out that, oh, this is for new orders, or this is for updating personal information, or this is the address, the shipping address changing. You could have different targets. And then this is the actual content that we want to pass back, which is just a generated message from before. Okay, so where is this going? Like, where's SignalR? Yeah, it's like wherever SignalR is, right? And it's like, okay, well, I haven't shown you how I've configured SignalR yet. And how is the dashboard even being served? Like, it's a mystery still. So I'm going to just scroll up to the top where I have a really complicated function called index.
Oh, interesting.
So, right. So, this is, Azure Functions is something you can call and it will return a result.
Yep.
So if you want to put some web content into storage and have a function return it, that's perfectly possible.
Oh, interesting.
So
I'd never thought about that before. Now you are opening up a bunch of ideas in my mind, because it makes sense when you think about it, but
right.
it doesn't make sense until you see it. So I understand
Right,
what's
exactly.
happening here. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, of course, I can just have an index and I can just serve my content and it's going to be static. But if I use SignalR, I can update it. So I kind of get a really low usage, very efficient kind of web serving, like serving web requests very efficiently here, right? So here's my index. When somebody hits this, when this Azure function gets triggered, because it's an HTTP trigger, I don't have to know that. I can just read it, right? It's going to get triggered when there's an HTTP request made for index. And you know what? You can even be anonymous. Anybody can hit that. It doesn't really matter. I haven't even done authentication at this point. Just anybody does this. And then all I need to do is return the result, because we've said it's an iAction result here. It's just what HTTP triggers look like in Azure Functions. You can return whatever content type you like. And here we've said, well, we're going to return HTML. And I'm just going to read it from disk, but I could have put this in Azure Storage. It could be in CosmosDB, doesn't matter. So what is this index HTML? Let me open up my content folder here, double click on my index HTML. And this is all that it takes for my dashboard to be served and to be live. So I have a header. I have my messages div, which is where I choose to have my SignalR updating its content. And then I just have a script, have a little bit of code. Here I'm setting up basically SignalR, and I can just import what I need to get SignalR working. I have to kind of define what it's going to be listening at. There's a window.location.origin that helps me understand the base URL. And then I just set up the connection. So this is me creating a SignalR live connection. And then here, I then define what happens when that connection receives a new message. And this is what I had in my message dashboard here. If I scroll down, you will see that the target here is new message. So as long as those two match, this is how I get my event to trigger on my client side. So when you saw me typing in the MSMQ, in the RabbitMQ, it went through all of my queues, it went through my Azure function, and it finally processed the order, assigned it, fired up the SignalR connection, and everybody was updated. No matter how many people had that window open, how many people are monitoring the dashboard, they would all receive the same update at the same time.
That's pretty clever, to be honest with you. And just to have it there and just connect to the hub and automatically get message. I think even as a developer, thinking about how I can even sort of use this to monitor some of my functions or other things happening in real time, create my own little mini dashboard that only I know about, right? It's pretty cool to see this. And the actual HTML, like you said, it's nothing fancy, but it gets the job done for what you need out of it.
Right. So to recap, we watched, we saw ourselves create a new Azure function that could receive messages from RabbitMQ and then output messages into CosmosDB. And we saw that how it's asynchronously connected with another function that receives that message right here, receives the message from the CosmosDB, and then broadcasts to everybody else. And we saw how Visual Studio is helping me write the majority of this code. I don't have to know how the triggers are configured. I don't have to manually configure the connection strings. Even when it came to my web API, we could generate all of our employee and order context, which is how we connect the database. And we're able to connect, we're able to set up the connection in program.cs and also generate all the controllers. And then finally, we saw how with SignalR, we can, and functions, we can serve static content, which is like a cool idea. I wonder what else we can do with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can also keep it live. So, okay, this is just cool little pieces of the puzzle that I can now go and explore many different ways of putting it together.
That's super cool. I really love it because it is kind of that like real world example scenario that you have. And yet, letting the power of Visual Studio come in and set up a lot of that plumbing and that pipeline for you that you can manage and configure later on. And then just writing some C# code where needed. But it's really cool to see all the pieces, right? You got the web API, you got SignalR, you got Azure Functions, you got CosmosDB. And I like this view a lot, right? Like in this connected services view, I think a lot of developers don't know what this view is for, right? And this is a great
Right.
example of, hey, your applications use a bunch of stuff, even if it's local. I want to make sure, like, if on this page, like you have a local RabbitMQ
Mhm.
on a container, you have a local Azure storage emulator, right? And you show that you can put in a Cosmos
Mhm.
DB emulator, right? In the application insights SDK is local. It's just like you can do things locally, and then you decide where you want to deploy and set things up when you're ready. But sometimes for me, I want to develop and I just want to like work on some code for a few weeks. I'm not ready to deploy up to the cloud yet, but when I'm ready, Visual Studio is going to help me out, but it's also going to help me debug locally, which is really nice.
Yep, and we need everybody's help to make this even better. So, as you saw, the scope of this is massive. So we want feedback. We would love it if our users are telling us, you know what, I love the all this list of dependencies you have here,
Hmm.
but you're missing one that I really like, or there's one that I really need that you're just not helping with, or there's one that is really tricky, and I would love your help with. Please let us know. We're adding dependencies to this list pretty much as fast as we can, as long as we know it's fulfilling a real scenario, a real use case. Um, and don't just stop there. I showed you how, especially third-party connections, the onboarding might take a little bit of time, having to learn new management tools. And what can VS do to help you get to those things easier so you don't have to memorize them, you don't have to find them out and remember passwords and that kind of stuff. So you saw how I can just open the management portal for RabbitMQ. What are some other cool integration points that you're interested in? What other things you wish VS could do for you so that you don't have to do them manually on every project?
Yeah.
And finally, I think you should have me back for another episode where we talk about how connected services and publish work together, because some people might be thinking now, well, this thing connects to emulators and then it connects to live things. What if I want to change that for my test environment? What if I want to go all Azure connections for my pre-prod? That's where publish comes in. And that's where, after you publish to Azure, the exact same connected services experience that you see here will appear in your publish profile.
That's
So,
cool. We'll leave it on a
yeah.
cliffhanger and have Angelos back to show us how connected services and publish in Visual Studio better together. Angelos, thank you so much for showing this off. And of course, leave feedback. All the things that Angelos just asked you to do, go down there and ask him away. And we'll put all of the links that Angelos has and source code and all that stuff in the show notes below. Angelos, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James. This was great.
Awesome.
I had a fun time. Yeah.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And don't forget, heck, if you've made it this far in the video, if you're on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Super appreciate that. Heck, share it with some coworkers. They'd probably love to know what's going on in Visual Studio. And don't forget to subscribe if you're over on YouTube as well. That all goes into that YouTube algorithm of goodness and helps other developers find this video. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and all the other amazing YouTube channels from Microsoft here. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, I'm James Montemagno, and this has been on .NET.